3, 2, 1. YouTube.com, Jamestown, California. So I'm in Garden Grove, California right now, going back to Anaheim where I reside currently. Most of the juncture of me living and residing in Orange County has been in Anaheim. Although I've lived in Tustin, Fountain Valley, Santa Ana, Anaheim Hills was most of the juncture. Also Corona. I had my own house out there. And let's think of some other cities that I've lived in. Garden Grove. Placentia. Placentia is actually the nicest city and happiest. I lived in Irvine. I lived in Irvine a couple of times for years at a time. So I've resided in most of these cities, and each city has its own uniqueness and culture to it. And it's a little different. I know that I believe it's the 6th most condensed county or populated in all of the United States. So that guy just almost ran that stop sign and almost smacked me. Did you see that? So Orange County has some cloud of voting and decision making. Currently, the debate is going back to school for the kids. And I don't understand why these faculty people don't understand that the kids need to get back into the life that's normal as soon as possible, so they don't remember this as a complete buffoonness by the way everyone is reacting. What that means is you're kind of traumatizing kids with all of this confusion because they only understand and know so much of what you're trying to say versus what the adults understand what's going on. And I just don't think it's fair to the kids to traumatize them by not going back to school and then playing activities like baseball, basketball, track and field, or women's sports, girls' sports like volleyball. Also, girls play soccer. And I don't see why they're not on the schedule to come back to school. And I think the cities should really make this the number one issue, because while everyone is adapting and business is reopening or it's the businesses are shut down, it's not fair to those businesses that are shut down, because the businesses that are open are giving temperature checks, and sometimes we're getting checks 2 and 3 times a day. So there are ways for kids to go back to school, and if the reason that they're not going back to school is because teachers are afraid they're going to get sick, then maybe those teachers should find another field and allow other teachers to be teachers, because some teachers I have a lot of respect and admiration for, but some teachers, to me, I think you're just there to get a paycheck. And it's just despicable and hideous, the fact that they're even debating this. And they need to get that tolerance and immune strong as soon as possible. I was reading a report today that you're most likely to get sick at home than you are out. And that's another thing that I was trying to cover while this was happening, that the government wasn't doing enough to help people with their rent on all the ladders, from 1 to 10 on that ladder. And that's what's causing the numbers to go up, in my opinion. And that's 50% of why I think the numbers are going up. Because a lot of those people no longer live in the same house and get forced to move to other houses where other roommates are the ones who are sick or getting sick or already have had the illness. Whereas if they were able to stay in the same house like me, that would make a big factor, because my lifestyle hasn't changed as much as other people's, because I haven't had to move. I almost had to move a couple of weeks ago, and I stood my ground, and my landlord changed his mind. So I was actually afraid that I was going to have to move just because that was going to bother me, that I was going to be around different people. My landlord stays to himself, and the only other way that I can get sick is through the other tenant. And a couple of weeks ago, that other tenant literally made me want to just vomit. And I did vomit. And I'm not going to say that that means that I got all of a sudden got sick. No, it's not that. It's not the way it works. However, this illness is replacing these illnesses. And people that normally would just get the flu or the cough, some of them are getting COVID-19. The factor. Back to Uber Eats. The driver doesn't know where the customer drop-off is until after he gets the food. Whereas the other company I work for, I see where the customer is, and I have a decision if I want to go do that order because I know what city it's in. Where Uber Eats, it's a complete buffoonness how they distribute the calls, trick the drivers, not give them their full tip. If it's a $10 tip, they're getting $5. If it's a $5 tip, they're getting $2.50. Sometimes customers aren't even tipping when the tip should be added to the percentage of the food at 15%. And the other companies I work for, there's no contact. We drop it off at the door, we go inside, get a temperature check at the hospital or whatever. But with Uber Eats, the customer comes right to the person's door, to the car, without a mask. So the driver is not able to just drive in 3 or 4 cities like I'm able to do. Ever since this whole pandemic, I have not taken any calls for Uber Eats for that reason. Not just because I get burned on my tips, but because I do not know where I'm going. And that's not fair to me. Especially if a customer is ordering from a Popeyes, and there's a Popeyes down the street, but I'm next to Popeyes in Anaheim, and they're going to send me to the Popeyes that I'm in close to in Anaheim, and then ask me to drive it to Irvine. That's not cool. And that's what Uber Eats does. Where the other companies, I know if I'm going to Buena Park, Fullerton, Stanton, Cypress, whatever city I'm going to, Garden Grove, Anaheim, Orange, big difference. The roommates moving because they didn't have the ability to pay their rent. Number one. People having to go back to work when they should have just collected unemployment till it's gone. So what? It's our money. But they're forced to go back to work over that $100 minuscule difference that the government's crying about. Oh, they don't want to go back to work. Well, maybe we don't want to get sick. Maybe we don't have to go back to work. You're the one that closed down business. Everybody has a different situation. Most people have to pay their bills, pay their rent, so they have to do everything on the fly or by the day to make the decisions. Sometimes they just bust and then they have to file unemployment. I was considering, and I just did an account, because I don't want to go out and I don't want to get sick from other people. And I think I have the right, if you're forcing me to be kind of, isolated. But in my case, me working is allowing me to go out. So I have not filed for unemployment, but I haven't made even 50% of the normal earnings. If I were to make $400 or $500 or $600 a week, I'm down to, my last thing was $217. And I was really happy about that. And then on the weekends, 65 out of $100. So that's about 35% I'm down. And I got a couple of good calls to make up for that. Those are two factors, I think, people having to move. And then people working and traveling to other states is another factor. But this idea of blaming everybody as asymptomatic and they're going to get you sick, I think it's kind of using the CCP style broadcast media, throwing everybody in the germs basket like they're doing in the regime over in Syria. In fact, as soon as they started to label people as germs, this started to happen here. Like as if the Democrats took the idea. All lives matter, right? Well, not to Democrats. Why report on civilian casualties in the Syria campaign if those people's lives don't matter to them? And then Donald Trump not helping Turkey while Russia, Iran, and Syria had broke the last 2 ceasefire agreements that were signed by them to have complied with. And the civilians have done nothing to attack anything that they would claim that they have. All that crap about terrorists and all that, it's not the way that the Syria campaign is being conducted right now. And it's not fair that we're the strongest country in NATO and our president, because of poll numbers, doesn't want to help Turkey while they're just enforcing a truce that was broken by the other parties. If you don't do anything about it, they're just going to keep doing it. And that's the problem with the Trump administration, is they care only about their votes and the people that are voting. And then you'll hear people on their side, well, I don't want to go to in the Middle East, and those people don't matter. That's how it is. And I understand that. It's been like that with both parties, especially the Democratic Party, the one that supports Iran and the nuclear deal and the money that's funneled from that deal to the Syria campaign. And right now they're broke. And they're banking on the Biden campaign to win so they can get a little more money so they can continue bombing and killing civilians, bombing schools, bombing hospitals. I mean, there's a pattern here if you don't notice it. It's just a little different the way the Democrats are conducting their warfare against people. And then you'll ask MSNBC, cover the Syria campaign, civilian deaths in hospitals, in schools, pictures of babies getting slaughtered and massacred. And they're all white, with blue eyes, blue and brown hair, gold, white people, Caucasian. But those lives, to the Democratic media, MSNBC, Joy and company, those lives don't matter. So why would they want to go and get involved in a war so one of their people would go and die for helping free people? That's how they look at it. They've made the whole concept of this country opposite. We are not a prejudiced country. We have overcome prejudice. I'll give you an example about prejudice that they're claiming that's there, that's not there. Starting with the civil rights happened at 1964. Muhammad Ali was the world champion with, as Cassius Clay and Muhammad Ali, more than one time. Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Larry Holmes, Ken Norton. I met the champ one time in Irvine. Ken Norton, I met him. What about basketball? The greatest basketball player ever during the 1980s and 1990s, Michael Jordan. I mean, I'm looking at this and what you guys are claiming and what you're saying is just not true. Because the people that were able to work under the conditions, they flourished. And they were the best. And there was nobody, white, Asian, no one better. And it's just hideous to listen to this MSNBC, Joy Media, not covering the Syria campaign. There's war against civilians, bombing of hospitals. You can get one correspondent down there or from the booth to report on the news, on the international breaches of those agreements that the Russians and Iran just breached. I'm starting to be suspected that the Democrats have retaliated on us for what happened with the General Soleimani in Iraq. As if that was not just. All the civilians he destroyed and killed in Syria, and then he wants to be in Iraq with United States liberated, and he thinks it's okay to plan attacks from Iraq. The Bush administration would have hammered him at that moment if they had the intelligence. Hammered it. This policy of weakness is causing the national emergency to get to this point and get worse. Because we have been weak on international policy, our adversaries are the ones that are doing all of this by convincing our unintelligent people to side with them. And I saw that yesterday when I'm looking at Joe Biden getting Muslim community to help him. Well, those Muslims in that community supporting a Democrat for party reasons, well, that party is the one destroying the Arabic people in Syria. There's a difference between just Arabic people that are non-Muslim and then Muslim people that are from Iran that want to be political. First of all, if you are saying that you're Muslim, you should be against abortion. So you can't be a Democrat. It's not possible for you to be a Democrat, but that's what's happening, and I know that's a fact. And my people that I know were Democrats because they just don't care. They say what they are, and they're really not. That's a big one right there. And then if you want to stop the Syria campaign and stop the destruction of 1 million kids have been killed, or civilians, and 500,000 kids bombed to the shits. And then there's no response by the U.S. media. You could pound sand Brian Williams and your company. I begged you to cover it. And it's a human thing to cover. You have no soul. Elon Musk, you said that people have a soul or their people are souls. It's not true. Just because you said it doesn't mean it's true. They have no souls. Their souls are soulless. If I had Brian Williams' job, I would have conquered the Syria campaign. I would have been reporting on it. But Brian Williams, he thinks he's too good to report on it. Because those lives don't matter. Because they're white. Horrible how stupid you people have made this. You call this a prejudiced country? When I was a kid, and if you were to call a person who is black an African American, he would punch you in the face on the street. You called me an African, he would kick your ass. You wouldn't do that. And you've made it to where you call, and everyone's calling black Americans African Americans. And that's not the proper term. People used to be proud and happy of what they are. And you made it to where they're not. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, brown. And in broadcasting, in sports broadcasting specifically, right before this national emergency took place, I complained to my teacher about what was going on in sports broadcasting. You want to know what I told him? That in sports broadcasting, there's only white and black. There's no Arabic. There's, other than Mr. Amin, there's no Arabic. There's no Korean. There's no Latin. There's no Spanish. It's only black and white. They take all the spots. And the only third spot that was available are pretty hot girls who are field reporters. The ones that do some of the interviews on the sidelines. They added that third job. So the third wheel is a hot, beautiful girl of whatever race it is. So to compete against 1 and 2, then to go against number 3, you're not going to compete against number 3 because number 3 is trying to get to be number 1, and she's going to be number 1, but she starts from the number 3 spot. I'm going to leave the take right there. I'm going to go to one of these markets here and leave the take here. I'm in Anaheim Plaza. But I wanted to stop my car and do the take, but I'm just going to leave the take here. So that is take 2 for today. And I am really concerned that this counterculture, the fact that we're even discussing it, it just makes me sick. And I saw, and I did criticize a prominent doctor who was talking about the issue a few weeks ago. And they probably like, well, why is he criticizing him for? Well, I was criticizing him because I don't think it's even proper to talk about the issue anymore, because I feel as if we conquered it. And any prejudice that's out there is because of either Donald Trump or it's isolated. And it's not national, like 56%. And then the best-selling books are the ones that are the most prejudiced. What about the best-selling books that should be the best-selling books that actually have the new Green Deal in it that no one wanted to help me to do? At the price tag of paying the national debt with that deal in that book. And I copyrighted it. And I'm needing someone to help me redo the book because I want to limit the pages and I want to remarket it, number one. Notice that I put Tom Keynes instead of Tim Keynes. I thought my final draft was the correct draft, but I noticed that the company did not. They charged me a lot of money for services because I was inexperienced. My second, third, and fourth books are where I want them to be writtenly, but not marketedly. I need to market them. I am the one that did James Republican Strategy National Economy. And that's where I left off, ironically, in my work, right when this national emergency started. Because the national economy is the key to Republican strategy. And the Democrats know that. That's why the economy is like this. And Donald Trump should resign. That way the government could function. And then start passing legislation to fix this economy and to stand up to our adversaries instead of being the adversary. When I saw those Muslims supporting Joe Biden yesterday, they weren't really standing up for Arabic people because they should be conservative. They should be pro-life and pro-lowering taxes. Not because they think they're going to win. It's kind of sinister that they're siding with the Democrats, but they've always sided with the Democrats. And it's a phenomenon to me that they believe in something, but then when it comes to our politics, it's not what they believe in, or it's not as important. It's kind of funny to me, because I like to criticize people when they're being inconsistent with those beliefs when it comes to politics. Not personally criticizing people, because you should not be criticizing someone personally, but when it comes to political views, in order to convince someone that life starts at the heartbeat, you need to have a debate about the issue to people that are just not willing to listen or willing to change. In that case, it's in black and white. Life is a life, and everyone should be pro-life, and we're in $30 trillion in debt, and those lives should be spared, unless there's the percentages of the women's health or crimes. 99% of life needs to be lived, not aborted. And if you don't have that view, then there's something wrong with you. If you want to have an alternate view where the right to choose, I agree that the women should have the right to choose, but not to destroy a life and a baby. All lives matter, especially the babies. Are you telling me that it's okay to give $300 billion to Bank of America for your lives matter, but it's not okay for the baby that has no voice, who hasn't been born yet, that he or she, a lot of she's, their lives don't matter? That's pathetic. That is hideous. And if you don't believe in that, then your cause isn't worth anything. And the way your parents brought you up, I'm going to question it. Because either they were not intelligent or they purposely educated you in a face-fucking the phone way. Our kids need to go back to school. Your lives matter, but their lives matter too. That doesn't make it prejudice because a person thinks the kids should go to school or a life starts at the heartbeat. But you're getting $300 million here, another 400 there, and your son is now on the Washington Nationals mound. I covered the Washington Nationals and covered all the teams in my box scores and my website last year to prove that I could pick a team that had no chance to win, and within a certain point they were going to win it all. And that was one of the teams I used, or did. And they all were on board, and they won the World Series. But I'm not going to follow the Nationals this year. I'm going to find another team to follow and have a little more fun with. And just like the Senators and the Nationals, they hadn't won the World Series since 1933, and then they won it last year. That's what's going to happen to the Nationals, because they're still the Nationals. They're not like the Dodgers. I mean, really. It's okay to honor and respect all lives and all lives matter. White lives, black lives, brown lives. But you're not doing that. You're using one lives to side with other lives, and then you're ruining the history that already happened that people today have nothing to do with. And that's just not the way our culture is supposed to function. And if that's the way you think our culture should function, then you're part of the problem. And when you attack us through your adversaries the next time, you're going to be the first person that's going to stand up for freedom. That way you can get a little taste and understand what earning freedom is all about. Just like our forefathers and all the troops that fought other wars, that you're going after them too in a weird way. Acting like everything could just get paid for and the economy sucks. The Democrats, their party should be abolished. They've breached the contract and trust of the American people. Just because Donald Trump should resign and sucks as president and Nixon resigned doesn't mean that the government and the Democratic side can't function. But that's what's happening. And it's going to continue to happen. And these poll numbers are now 47 and 47%. That means one or two states are going to have the final call on this. And right now, if I was Republicans, I'd be concerned about Ohio. Because I think Pennsylvania has gone blue. And I think Ohio can go blue too. And I don't think Texas is going to go blue, but it's going to be a close election. There are a lot of Democrats in Texas. See, people kind of walk up to the phone. So I'm going to leave the take right there. I appreciate you guys listening. YouTube.com, Jamestown, California.